Hey guys, it's the Caveman here. I'm going to start doing a bunch of different series on YouTube, some about production, some about mixing and mastering, sometimes reviews. We're going to start with production today, and we're going to start with risers. Risers are a pretty important tool in most of electronic music. We use them to build energy and create tension before a drop or even a chorus, really anything that's going to be after the riser, right? We build the tension, we build the energy, and we resolve to something that either grooves or makes your head bang, that makes you sing along, whatever the case may be. We want to create that tension before we get to the resolve. Risers help your song have more impact, feel like I said before, there's more energy, and they kind of spruce up your song to kind of split up the different segments of your tracks. Now, one of the reasons why I'm kind of doing risers in a synth as opposed to kind of just dragging in audio files and pitching them up that way is one of the really cool things about using a synth is you have the ability to save the patch and come back. And just by changing a few really simple things after you've made the kind of foundation patch, you can get, tons and tons of different riser sounds from this one patch, and always save them as something new or bounce them to audio, record them into audio, and save them for yourself, sell them if that's what you're into. But I really wanted to focus on the actual design of them and what's happening to them. So those of you who don't know have the ability to make your own, but also just understand what's going on. So this video is going to focus more on the concept of a riser rather than how to make this one specific riser sound, right? Even though we'll end up with a specific result, I'll be focusing more on what's happening rather than what the result is. Now to start, you don't need a lot of crazy sounds or anything to start with your risers. We'll start with something simple. I'm just going to jump into the acid sound. It's something I like. It's something that comes stock with Serums, so I know that all of you guys have it as well, as long as you're in Serum. Now I should also mention that a lot of these concepts that I go over in Serum, they apply to any synth that you prefer to use: Silent, Massive, Operator, whatever your choice of synth is. This concept of having something pitch over time is the exact same. But the process will change because the UI is different and how some synths operate are different. But as long as you understand your LFOs, you understand the basics of your synth, especially if you do know your matrix, or how to have LFOs affect other sounds, you'll be able to take this information and use it anywhere. But again, so for the basics of a riser, right, we just need a sound pitching up over time. So we're going to start with an LFO. Again, LFOs are low frequency oscillators. They oscillate much like oscillators do, but at lower frequencies, so they create rhythms and patterns instead of tones. We're going to start with LFO 1, and we're going to create a ramp up effect because we want the pitch to ramp up over time. Now, if you notice, this LFO is set to BPM, meaning it's going to sync to the tempo of our song instead of being free based off of the frequency that it is actually oscillating at. If we turn that off, we can see we get a frequency value and not just a time division of music. We're going to leave it within the syncing capabilities because we want it to be relative to the tempo that we're at, so we can just pull this patch in and use it at any tempo. That's one of the other benefits of using not using audio files in this sense. Don't get me wrong, using audio files for effects and even bouncing your main instrument sounds into audio files and processing them that way is an endless world of creativity. But one cool thing I like with the risers within a synth is it doesn't matter what BPM you're at, it'll always sync up. It doesn't matter. Maybe you want a faster, maybe you only want a 2-bar riser, a 1-bar riser. You can take your favorite risers that you've made, and like I mentioned before, just open up Serum, change a few settings. Now you got a completely different riser, faster, slower, different sound, different shape, all these kind of good things. So we're going to go with 4-bar. Generally, I like to go 8-bar, but we're going to stick with 4-bar so we don't have to wait around for 8 bars to play every time we want to listen to the sound. Now, if we listen, I haven't set this LFO to affect anything yet, so we still just got our normal acid bass playing. what I want to do, there's a bunch of different ways to take this LFO and have it change the pitch over time. We can take it to the actual pitch sections on each oscillator. We could take it to the chorus, the fine, the semitone, the octave, and these are all going to yield different results. But I like using, which you'll see a lot of people using, is actually using the global tab in our matrix and using the master tuning. So what we have is LFO1, the source, and then we'll figure out the amount in a second, which is modulating the destination, which is the master tuning. So let's set this up. Now when we set this to the destination to master tuning, this will become semitones, right? So if we set 24 semitones, we'll hear the sound increase from here up to here with 24 semitones. But before we do that, if we want it to start at the note we're playing, we need to set the polar mode to unipolar. It was on bipolar. When it's on bipolar, the note you play is actually the middle point. So if it's moving in one direction, it'll start 24 semitones or 12 semitones before your starting note, and then rise past that. But if we set it to unipolar mode, now we'll start at the note we play and only move upwards. And one thing we'll do, we're going to turn on the trigger mode on LFO1, so that every time we play a note, we start back at the beginning. If we set it to bipolar, you'll notice that we start actually an octave below where we were playing. Maybe even 2, because we're going 24 up, so it's going to start 24 down. That's not what we're looking for, so we're looking to start on the note we play. So we got a basic note pitching up over time over 4 bars. And we can speed that up. You can create laser sounds with this, a whole bunch of different things, but we're going to focus on risers. So that's really basic, right? And that's what you want to start with. Just start with something basic that increases pitch over time. Now, to make the sound a little more spicy, I'm actually going to turn this guy on, but I'm going to bring its volume down. So we're only going to use this as a modulator for FM synthesis. Now, I'll do a whole different video on FM, but there's tons of stuff on YouTube that you can find already. Now, if you don't understand what FM is, because we're not going to get into it today, I want my videos to be a little more quick and concise. So if we listen to what's happening with the FM synthesis, we're starting to affect the timbre and texture of the original sound without hearing this second sound. Right? So we want this to increase over time, similarly to the way the pitch does. So in order to do that, we'll take the same LFO and we'll have it maybe go about to like 70%. And so now when we play it, we'll notice that not only does the sound increase in pitch, but the sound itself changes over time, which again makes things more interesting, makes things a little more professional than to just have a stagnant sound that doesn't change at all. So we get that vocally tone. Maybe we don't have to go up to 70%. Maybe we'll go up to like 60 because it's a little too harsh at the end. And maybe we can even start a little higher and then set this to kind of around the same place that we were at. And generally speaking, I would be talking about the values that I'm setting things at, but because we're not looking for a specific sound in this video, the values don't really matter. It's really wherever you want, right? This video is here just to show you the basics of creating your own risers. So now we have a basic sound that increases over time. But let's say like, well, how do we make this a little more professional, a little more interesting? Well, I would say the first thing we want to do is start to create some motion in the sound so that the sound itself sounds like it's speeding up, not just pitching up. Now, there's a few ways to do this, more so, I guess, a couple. Few ways being there's some weird things you can try. But just for a basic, type of movement on the sound, you can either have the volume of the sound modulated. So, right, something like that. And we'll get over like speeding it up in a second. Or you can do a filter movement, which I actually prefer to do. And what filter you use, it really depends on what you're looking for. Like if we take LFO2 now, so what we're using LFO2 to, you know, make the sound like it's revolving itself. So that's the low pass, but I mean I love the sound of low pass, but I think for high pass, for a build, maybe high pass probably best. So we'll go high 24. So we're just getting some more movement in the sound, giving a little bit of interesting. If you want, you can increase the resonance. Use some of the settings here, but we're gonna leave them. And what we have right now, actually, if you can see, this modulator, or the LFO, is in bipolar mode. So notice how where we set the actual cutoff point is actually the middle point for the full modulation. So we can change that by hitting holding Alt and Shift and then clicking. And if you notice, when you do that, it changes the LFO2 now to bipolar. Or I keep mixing those up. Unipolar, sorry. So we were on bipolar being where your cutoff point, or your any knob really, is now the middle point. And it's going to move from below that to above that. But we want to move from where we start to just above. So now we can set our point. Maybe we don't need to go all the way up because we don't want to lose all those frequencies. All right, but that's still kind of boring because the sound itself isn't speeding up. We want this LFO to also speed up over time. And to do that, we're going to have to use the matrix again. And we're going to take LFO1, right? And we're going to use LFO1 to modulate the rate of LFO2. Okay, and again, we're going to set it to unipolar, so we only move upwards from our point of selection rather than below and then upwards. So we're going to set it doesn't matter what we set here, again, kind of to taste. Now, the only problem is that we have this LFO2 set to BPM mode. Now, what you could do is if we figure, okay, this is 4 bars and we want to be able to step this up. The problem is we want to increase the rate. So you can't really start stepping things. Maybe if you brought in another LFO. The only problem with having it synced is, like you can hear, it kind of jumps and it doesn't stay, it won't be synced. Like if you have your drums speeding up, going from like, you know, quarter notes to eighth notes to 16th notes, along with other instruments doing that for the build, this isn't going to sync up properly with them, which might, you know, create issues. For risers, I generally like to have more of a free approach. So we're going to turn off BPM and we're going to leave it on actual hertz. Now I'm going to drop down to maybe about 2 hertz. And if we listen now, you get that really nice free movement of speeding up, right? And that's what risers do. They're generally free of sync because that's what helps part of the tension, right? You get tension when pitches aren't lining up, when rhythms aren't lining up, and it starts to create this uneasy tension, and then which makes that release for the drop or the chorus or whatever so enjoyable. So maybe I'm going to start a little lower, maybe like 1 hertz. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now we could even add like a little bit of a down, so when it reaches the point, it all revolves back down. But again, that's up to taste and really what you feel you're looking for. But that's pretty much it for creating a basic riser. Now for effects, there's some things you could do. You could do hyperdimension. I don't want to again focus too much on things that Serum has. I want to focus more on things that you can do anywhere. So maybe some saturation or distortion, just to give it a little bit of push. You don't want to do too much because we're not looking for that distorted sound. We're just looking for a little bit of push. And then, as always, a little bit of multi-band compression. Turn the volume down. So we're just really accentuating all the frequencies. And another thing you can do is have an EQ that, depending on if you want the sound to get darker over time or brighter over time, or thinner, I should say, if we take the gain of this guy and the frequency down, and again, just using LFO1, that's a little trick that if you make an LFO shape and you have a bunch of things you want to modulate, if you use that one LFO shape, you can create a lot of complexity out of simplicity because you have all these things moving, but they're moving in the same way. So you get a really interesting sound that really doesn't require you to worry about different LFOs or different oscillations kind of contrasting with each other or creating issues. So we don't need to get that thin. Just maybe thin up over time. And the last thing, maybe we could add a little bit of reverb. We'll put the reverb last. And again, same thing, LFO1 on the mix. We won't go full. And that's pretty much it. You got a beautiful riser. And now this is what I'm talking about. Now that you have this foundation, we'll save it. I'll call this YouTube 2 because I already have a YouTube 1 from my previously shitty recorded video. And now that you have this saved, we can start, maybe want to like a pluck kind of, instead of that wub wub sound, you want more of a pluck sound. We're just going to take the LFO that's controlling the filter movement and change the shape of it by drawing a pluck shape. And maybe in this case, to get more of that pluck sound, we'll use the low pass again. We're going to turn trig on for this as well. So you can get, a whole bunch of, and we can change this. Now we can change the sounds. Maybe we get some weirder stuff, like some of the excellent stuff I have. Maybe we'll start the FM higher. And there's so many things you can do over time too. You can increase, add in some chorus, maybe even the hyperdimension over time, just to create more of. So again, we're going to use LFO1 on the mix here. Really an endless amount of things. Well, not endless, but there's a whole bunch of extra things you can do, and then plus processing out of it. But just the basics of a riser. That's pretty much it. Pitch over time, some kind of change in terms of texture and timbre over time, and some kind of change or speed, some kind of change of speed in the sound moving. So that could be even maybe the FM just gets faster, goes, increases its speed over time. But filters and volumes are a really good way to create that kind of movement. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If it was useful for you, drop a like, hit subscribe. I'm planning to keep dropping these as fast as I can. So I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for watching.